The encrypted phone buzzed once in the darkness of the tent. Liam Cross stared at the screen, hands trembling as the message decoded itself letter by letter. Tomorrow, Ghost. The medic knows too much. Make it look like an accident or the old woman burns with the children inside. Attached was a photo. Not of a target. Not of a mission file. Mother Superior stood in front of St. Michael's Orphanage, surrounded by 30 kids under the age of 12. Red crosshairs digitally overlaid her face. Liam's throat closed. He typed back with shaking fingers. There has to be another way. The response came instantly. There isn't. Comply or we start with the youngest ones first. You have 16 hours. He deleted the conversation, powered down the phone, and pressed his palms against his eyes. Across the tent, someone stirred. Eli Torres, the team medic, sat up on his cot. Even in the dim light, his eyes were sharp. Can't sleep either? Eli's voice was soft, almost gentle. Liam forced his hands down, tried to smile. Just pre-mission nerves. Eli studied him for a long moment. Too long. Then he swung his legs off the cot and walked over, sat down beside Liam on the footlocker. He didn't say anything at first, just placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, the way he'd done 1,000 times since they were kids. Brother, Eli said quietly, if you're carrying something heavy, you know you can tell us. Rhea and me. We're family. Liam looked at the photo of Mother Superior still burned into his mind, at the children, at the threat. He thought about telling Eli everything. About the debt, about the blackmail, about the impossible choice. Instead, he lied. I'm good, Eli, really, just want to get this one done and go home. Eli's hand tightened slightly on his shoulder. For a second, Liam thought he saw something flicker in his friend's eyes. Understanding, maybe, or suspicion. But Eli just nodded, squeezed once more, and stood up. Okay, but the offer stands. Always. He walked back to his cot, but Liam saw him pull out his phone before lying down. Saw the faint glow as Eli typed something. Sent it. Then tucked the phone under his pillow and closed his eyes. Liam stared at the tent ceiling, chest tight. 16 hours. Eli had to die in 16 hours, or 30 children would burn alive. The desert wind rattled the tent flaps. Somewhere in the distance, a generator hummed. And Liam Cross made the only choice he thought he had left. Morning arrived in shades of copper and ash. The briefing room smelled like stale coffee and gun oil. 22 SEALs and assorted support staff filled the cramped space, body armor and weapons stacked along the walls. Commander Briggs stood at the front, pointer in hand, mission map projected on the sand-colored wall behind him. Listen up. Intel confirms 12 hostages held in this compound. He tapped the screen. A satellite image appeared, buildings clustered in a valley between rocky hills. Local warlord, foreign mercenary support. We hit at 2200 hours tonight. Fast and clean. He moved the pointer across the map, assigning sectors. When he reached the overwatch position marked on a ridgeline 1,200 meters north of the target, he paused. Sniper Overwatch, Petty Officer Calder. Rhea Calder stood from her seat near the back. She didn't salute, didn't speak, just stood, spine straight, hands loose at her sides. The room shifted, not quite a murmur, but close. Someone in the third row leaned toward his buddy, voice just loud enough to carry. The Range Queen. Never pulled a trigger when someone shoots back. Another voice from the left side. Diversity hire's gonna get us all killed. A third. Hope she doesn't freeze when bullets fly both ways. Rhea's face didn't change. She bit down lightly on the pencil she'd been holding, rolling it between her teeth for just a second before lowering it. The small motion had a rhythm to it, deliberate, measured, 4 beats. At the back of the room, Logistics Officer Vance, a man in his 50s with silver threading through close-cropped hair, went completely still, his eyes locked on Rhea's hands. On the way, her fingers rested against the pencil. Pinky pressure, thumb indexed along the side. The exact grip position used for a sniper rifle's forestock. Muscle memory doesn't lie. Vance shifted his gaze to Rhea's forearm. Her sleeves were rolled to just below the elbow, regulation length. But when she'd reached up to adjust the strap on her shoulder rig a moment earlier, the fabric had pulled back. Just a fraction, just enough. He'd seen the dark edge of ink there, not the whole image, just the outline. But after 20 years supporting Tier 1 operations, he knew what he was looking at. His mind raced back. 3 years ago. The program. The unit that officially didn't exist. The selection course where only 6 operators graduated, 5 men, 1 woman. He'd helped coordinate logistics for that cycle, had memorized the roster, including the 1 female candidate who'd supposedly washed out after week 7. Calder. Rhea Calder. Same name, same face. But the official record said she'd failed and been reassigned to conventional teams. He looked at her now, at the way she stood, balanced, weight slightly forward on the balls of her feet, not her heels. At the way her breathing stayed even, despite the jabs and murmurs. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, 4 count hold. Combat breathing. The kind you only learn when someone teaches you to stay functional while your world is on fire. Vance said nothing. He leaned back against the wall and crossed his arms, but his eyes never left her. Commander Briggs continued the briefing, oblivious. Calder, you'll maintain overwatch. Observe and report. Do not engage unless I give direct authorization. Clear? Clear, sir. Rhea's voice was quiet, steady. She sat back down, slipping the pencil into her vest pocket. Across the room, Liam Cross sat in the front row beside Eli Torres. He turned slightly, caught Rhea's eye, and gave her the smile they'd shared since they were 12. The one that meant, you and me, like always. We got this. But Rhea saw something underneath it, a tightness around his eyes, a tremble in his fingers when he gripped the edge of his chair. Liam had steady hands, always had. Even during their first firefight together 5 years ago, his hands had been rock solid. Now they shook. Eli, seated between them, placed a hand on each of their shoulders. His touch was warm, grounding. "My 2 strays from the orphanage," he said softly, just loud enough for them to hear. "We made it this far together. Let's finish strong." Rhea met his eyes. Eli had always been the center, the one who held things together when Liam got reckless and when Rhea went cold and silent, the one who reminded them what family meant when blood hadn't given them any. "Always, Eli," she murmured. Liam swallowed hard and nodded but didn't speak. Briggs wrapped up the brief, dismissed the room. Bodies moved, gear rattled, voices rose in the usual pre-mission chatter. Rhea stood and headed for the door. As she passed Vance, he stepped slightly into her path, not blocking her, just close enough. He held out his hand. In his palm was a small, worn challenge coin. It wasn't flashy. The metal was dull with age, the engraving barely visible. But Rhea's eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second before her face smoothed again. The coin was from a unit that no longer existed on paper. The kind of unit that didn't hand out coins to people who'd washed out. She took it slowly, met Vance's eyes. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just held her gaze for 3 seconds, then stepped aside. Rhea closed her fingers around the coin and walked out into the blinding desert sun. Inside her tent, an hour later, she sat on the edge of her cot and opened her hand. The coin sat heavy in her palm, the engraving facing up. She traced the symbol with her thumb, then set it carefully on the small folding table beside her gear. Next to it, she placed an old Polaroid. 3 kids, maybe 12 years old, standing in front of a chain-link gate. The sign above them read, St. Michael's Orphanage. Liam stood on the left, cocky grin even then. Rhea on the right, serious-faced, arms crossed. And Eli in the middle, one arm slung around each of them, laughing at something off-camera. Someone had written on the back in faded blue ink, "Family isn't blood. It's who you'd die for." Rhea stared at the photo, at Eli's smile, at Liam's younger, unburdened face, at her own guarded expression even as a child. She closed her eyes and breathed. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. The pattern was automatic now, carved into her nervous system during months of training that officially never happened. A shadow moved across the tent entrance. She opened her eyes. Vance stood outside, not entering, just lingering at the threshold. "You don't have to say anything," he said quietly. "But I know what I saw, and I know what that coin means. If you're here under orders no one else knows about, then you've got a reason. I won't interfere. But if you need anything off the books, you know where to find me." Rhea looked at him, then at the coin. "Appreciated." Vance nodded once and left. And she exhaled, picked up the Polaroid again, and tucked it into the inner pocket of her vest, right over her heart. Then she started prepping her gear, checking rifle optics, counting ammunition. running through mental rangefinder calculations. Muscle memory took over, and her hands moved with the kind of precision that only comes from thousands of repetitions. She didn't notice Eli standing outside her tent, phone in hand, watching through the gap in the canvas. Didn't see him look down at the screen and type a message to someone. Didn't see the way his jaw tightened as he hit send. The message read, "If something happens to me tonight, trust your gut." He pocketed the phone and walked away before she could see him. Darkness swallowed the desert. The convoy rolled out at 2100 hours, headlights off, night vision turning the world into shades of green and gray. Rhea rode in the back of the lead vehicle until they reached the drop-off point, then dismounted with her rifle case and pack. "Halo, you're up," Briggs said over the radio. "Get to your position. We'll call when we're ready to move." She keyed her mic once in acknowledgement, slung her gear, and started the climb. The ridgeline was steep, all loose rock and thorny scrub. It took her 40 minutes to reach the spot she'd marked on the map during planning. A narrow cleft between two boulders, just wide enough for her body and her rifle. Natural concealment. Clear line of sight to the target compound 1,200 meters below. She set up in silence. Rifle bipod extended. Range card taped to the rock beside her. Wind meter clipped to her vest. She glassed the compound through her scope, noting guard positions, weapon types, likely avenues of approach for her team. Then she settled in to wait. The radio crackled. Liam's voice, trying for lightness. "Halo, Ghost here. You in position?" She keyed her mic. "Affirm." "Good. Same as always, yeah? You watch my back, I do the stupid stuff." A pause. She almost smiled. "Copy that, Ghost." But even through the radio static, she heard it. The slight hitch in his breath. The forced cheer. Liam had been her brother since they were kids, and she knew every variation of his voice. This wasn't right. Down below, the assault team moved into position. She tracked them through her scope as they crept toward the compound perimeter. Eli was easy to spot, medic pack on his back, moving just behind Liam. Another voice cut in. Jonah Webb, the assistant team leader. "Ghost, you sure you trust Halo up there? If she freezes, we're exposed." Rhea's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Liam responded immediately, but his voice was strained. "She won't freeze. I've known her since we were kids. She's solid." Jonah didn't sound convinced. "If you say so." A moment later, Eli's voice came through on a private channel directly to Rhea. "Don't let them get to you. You've saved more lives than they know." She keyed back, voice low. "They don't need to know, Eli." "Maybe they should." She didn't answer that. Teal just adjusted her scope and scanned the compound again. Something was off. The guard patterns were too regular, too disciplined. Local warlord militias didn't move like this. These were trained fighters, professionals. She keyed the command channel. "Actual Halo, guard patterns look non-standard. Possible professional training." Briggs responded after a pause. "Noted. Continue observation." Not concern, just acknowledgement. She frowned but said nothing more. The team reached the outer wall. Liam led the first element, Eli close behind. They stacked up at a breach point, set a charge on the gate lock. Jonah gave the countdown. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was small, controlled. The gate swung open. The team flowed in. Radio chatter picked up. "Alpha moving. Bravo in position. No contact yet." Rhea tracked them through her scope, finger resting lightly along the trigger guard. Not on the trigger, not yet. Observe and report. Then Briggs's voice. "Halo, give me a demonstration shot. 800 meters, target dummy on the north wall." She shifted her aim, found the dummy, a crude mannequin set up on a rooftop, calculated wind, elevation, temperature, adjusted her scope one click, exhaled halfway and squeezed. The rifle bucked gently against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the dummy's head snap back, center mass hit, clean through. Radio silence for 2 full seconds. Then a voice she didn't recognize. "Lucky wind." Another voice, quieter. "Yeah, lucky." But Liam's voice cut through, too fast, too sharp. "Lucky wind, Halo, nice shot." Rhea frowned. Liam never called her shots lucky. He was the first one to brag about her skills, even when she told him to stop. But now his tone was brittle, defensive. She keyed her mic. "Ghost, you good?" A pause. Too long. "Yeah, all good. Let's finish this." The team moved deeper into the compound. Rhea scanned ahead, looking for threats. Then her scope caught something on the side of a building, a marking. Small, almost invisible to the naked eye. But through her thermal scope, it glowed faintly. Phosphorescent paint, the kind used for marking target zones in special operations. She zoomed in. The marking was fresh, and it was on a building that wasn't part of the briefed target set. She keyed her mic. Actual Halo, I have markings on Building 3, non-standard, possible indicator. Liam's voice cut in before Briggs could respond. Old markings from previous operations. We've seen those before. Ignore them. Too fast. Too certain. And Liam wasn't on the command net, shouldn't have been monitoring that channel so closely. Rhea's instincts prickled. She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo through her scope, and sent it to Vance with a single word. Verify. 3 dots appeared immediately. Received. Then, priority. She didn't get a response after that. Down below, the team moved into the interior courtyard. She watched Liam lead his element toward a cluster of buildings on the west side. Eli stayed close as always. They moved as a unit, as they'd trained. But then Liam veered slightly off the planned route, just a few degrees, toward one of the buildings marked with phosphorescent paint. Rhea's pulse quickened. She zoomed tighter on Liam's hands, and saw it, a faint smudge on his index finger. Paint residue, the same color as the markings. Her stomach dropped. Down below, Eli moved up beside Liam. She saw Eli glance at Liam's hand, saw him pause for just a fraction of a second. Then Eli pulled out his phone, angled it low, and took a photo. He typed something fast and hit send. A moment later, Rhea's phone buzzed. Message from Eli. She opened it. The photo showed Liam's hand, the paint smudge clear even in low light. Below it, a single sentence. If something happens to me, trust your gut. Rhea's breath caught. Her hands tightened on the rifle. She zoomed back to the compound just as Liam and Eli approached a narrow alley between 2 buildings. The same alley marked with phosphorescent paint. She keyed her mic, voice tight. Ghost, hold position. Do not enter that alley. Static. Then Liam's voice strained. It's the fastest route to the hostages. We're good. Liam, stop. That's marked. We're moving. Rhea's heart hammered. She zoomed tighter, scanning the alley entrance, and saw it. Tripwire, barely visible, connected to charges embedded in the walls. She screamed into the radio, Liam, stop! That's a kill zone! Do not enter that alley! Too late. Liam stepped through the entrance, Eli right behind him. The world turned white. If you think courage is loud, wait until you see what silence can do when everything's on the line. Hit that like button because this story is about to prove that the quietest person in the room might just be the most dangerous. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the whole truth comes out. The explosion ripped through the alley with a deafening roar, a wall of fire and pressure that sent shockwaves across the entire compound. Rhea's scope view filled with smoke and debris. Her ears rang despite her hearing protection. Her hands froze on the rifle, breath trapped in her lungs. For 3 seconds, she couldn't see anything. Just smoke. Just dust. Just the orange glow of fire. Then the smoke began to thin. She zoomed in, hands shaking now, no longer steady. The alley was a crater. Rubble and twisted metal littered the ground, and in the center of it all, 2 figures. Eli Torres lay motionless on his back, arms splayed, medic pack torn open. Blood spread beneath him in a dark pool, soaking into the sand. Liam Cross was on his knees 5 feet away, coughing, uniform scorched but intact. He staggered upright, turned, and saw Eli. Rhea watched through her scope as Liam stumbled forward, dropped beside Eli, pressed shaking hands against his chest. She saw his mouth moving, shouting. But the radio was chaos now, voices overlapping, panic rising. Jonah's voice broke through, ragged. Man down, medic! He stopped. It's Torres. Someone get to him. Another voice. I'm pinned. Can't move. Jonah again, crawling toward Eli, checking for a pulse. His hand lingered on Eli's neck for 5 seconds. 10. Then his head dropped. He's gone. The words were barely audible through the radio static. Eli's gone. Rhea's world tilted. Her vision blurred. The scope lens fogged slightly as her breathing hitched. She blinked hard, forced her eyes to clear, forced herself to keep watching. Liam was still kneeling beside Eli's body, hands covered in blood, staring down like he couldn't process what he was seeing. Then he looked up, directly toward the ridgeline where Rhea was positioned. Even at 1,200 meters, even through smoke and fire, she felt his gaze lock onto hers. And she knew. The phosphorescent paint, the tripwire, the way Liam had led them directly into that alley despite her warning. Her brother had just killed their brother. The radio exploded with noise again. "Contact! Contact all sides!" Gunfire erupted from every direction at once. Muzzle flashes lit up windows, rooftops, doorways. The assault team scattered, diving for cover as bullets tore through the courtyard. "We're surrounded!" "Where did they come from?" "Ambush! This is an ambush!" Rhea forced herself to move, swung her scope across the compound, counting targets. Too many. At least 40 fighters, maybe more. They wore mismatched gear but moved with coordination, flanking maneuvers, suppressing fire, bounding overwatch. These weren't local militia, these were trained mercenaries. Someone on the team shouted, "They knew we were coming! Someone tipped them off!" Jonah's voice, tight with fear. Fall back to the rally point." But there was nowhere to fall back to. The enemy had them boxed in on 3 sides. The only open route was a killing field, 100 meters of open ground with no cover. Rhea scanned desperately, calculating. Her team was pinned, outgunned, and their medic was dead. Her radio crackled. Jonah again, this time directly to her. "Halo, we can't hold! They're everywhere! If you don't do something, we're all dead!" She looked through her scope at the faces below, at the men who'd called her a range queen, who'd doubted her, who'd joked about diversity hires, at Liam still kneeling beside Eli's body, frozen in shock, at Eli himself, lying in the dirt, the man who'd always believed in her, who'd told her she'd saved more lives than anyone knew. Behind her, heat washed over her back. She glanced over her shoulder. Fire. A fuel leak from one of the vehicles had ignited and flames were spreading up the rocks toward her position. Smoke billowed thick and black, curling into the cleft where she'd set up. In 2 minutes, maybe 3, the fire would reach her. The smoke would choke her. She'd have to move or die. She could retreat, climb down the backside of the ridge, circle around to the extraction point, call for exfil. She'd survive, file a report, go home. But the team below would die. All of them. Her hand moved to the inner pocket of her vest, pulled out the Polaroid. 3 kids. Liam, Eli, Rhea. Family isn't blood. Eli's voice echoed in her memory from a conversation years ago after their first combat deployment. If you ever have to choose between your life and your brother's, don't think. Just act. Because hesitation kills more people than bullets. She looked at his face in the photo, at his smile. Then she looked down at his body in the compound, and she made her choice. She pulled out a fresh magazine, slapped it into her rifle, adjusted her position deeper into the cleft, ignoring the heat building behind her. Ignored the smoke starting to sting her eyes. She settled the rifle into her shoulder, pressed her cheek to the stock, and found the first target through her scope. A machine gunner on the north rooftop firing down at her team. She exhaled slowly. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. And squeezed the trigger. The machine gunner dropped. She shifted aim, found the next target. Squad leader barking orders from behind a low wall. Squeeze, drop, another target. RPG operator lining up a shot. Squeeze, drop. The radio was still chaos, but she tuned it out. Focused only on the scope. On the targets. On the math. Wind speed, distance, elevation, laid time for moving targets. Each shot was a problem to solve. Each target a calculation. She worked methodically, breathing in rhythm, ignoring the fire spreading closer, ignoring the smoke filling her lungs. Her world shrank to the circle of her scope and the steady pressure of her trigger finger. Down below, Jonah was shouting into his radio. "Who's shooting? We don't have air support. Someone tell me what's happening!" One of the SEALs, pinned behind a crumbling wall, risked a glance upward toward the ridgeline. Through the smoke and fire, he saw a figure. Small. Motionless except for the slight recoil of the rifle. Surrounded by flames. He keyed his radio, voice awed. "That's Halo. She's still up there. In the fire." Jonah snapped his scope up, zoomed in. He could barely make her out through the smoke, just the outline of her body, the barrel of her rifle, the rhythmic muzzle flash every few seconds. And then, as she shifted position to avoid a tongue of flame, her right sleeve caught on a jagged edge of rock. The fabric tore, pulling back past her elbow. Jonah's breath stopped. Even at distance, even through smoke, he saw it. Ink on her forearm, not a random tattoo. Not some memorial piece. A symbol. A trident. And numbers he couldn't quite make out but recognized the pattern of. His mind raced. He'd seen those markings before, once. In a briefing about units that didn't officially exist. About operators who were never named on rosters. About the kind of people who got erased from records and sent into places no one talked about. He keyed a different channel. Command Net. Directly to Vance back at the TOC. This is Webb. I need confirmation on Calder. What's her actual clearance level? Vance's voice came back immediately. No hesitation. Why are you asking? Because I just saw a Tier 1 marking on her arm, and she's currently holding off an entire mercenary platoon by herself while on fire. Silence on the radio for 3 full seconds. Then Vance. Stand by. Another few seconds, then Briggs's voice, tight and controlled. All units, this is actual. Disregard previous restrictions on Halo. She is cleared weapons free, full authorization. Repeat, Halo has command authority to engage at will. Jonah stared up at the ridgeline, at the figure still firing, still moving through smoke and flame like it was just another day. He whispered into his mic. Who is she? Vance answered quietly. Someone we were told washed out of the program 3 years ago. Turns out that was a cover story. She's been active this whole time. Undercover. And none of us knew. Jonah's hands shook. He looked around at the rest of the team, saw the realization spreading across their faces as they listened to the radio exchange. The woman they'd mocked. The one they'd called a range queen, the one they'd said would freeze, was a ghost, a legend, and she was saving their lives. The fire on the ridge grew hotter. Rhea's position was nearly untenable now. Flames licked at the rocks behind her, smoke so thick she had to hold her breath between shots. Her eyes streamed tears, her throat burned, and the heat was starting to blister the exposed skin on her neck. But she didn't stop. She counted in her head. 18 targets down. 19. 20. The enemy fire slackened. Confusion spread through their ranks as their leaders and gunners dropped one after another. They started to pull back, shouting in multiple languages, trying to figure out where the shots were coming from. Jonah seized the opportunity. All elements, move now. Use the smoke. Get to the rally point. The SEALs scrambled up, dragging wounded, covering each other as they sprinted for the exit corridor. Rhea tracked them through her scope, still firing, covering their retreat, dropping anyone who tried to pursue. 23, 24, 25. Her lungs screamed for air. The heat was unbearable. She had maybe 30 seconds before she'd have to abandon the position or pass out. She shifted her aim to the last critical target, a spotter on the far rooftop calling coordinates into a radio. If he lived, he'd vector in reinforcements. The team wouldn't make it. She adjusted for the wind one last time, exhaled, held, squeezed. The spotter fell. 26. She dropped the rifle and rolled backward, out of the cleft, just as the flames surged into the space she'd occupied. She scrambled down the backside of the ridge, coughing violently, skin raw, eyes blinded by tears and smoke. At the bottom, she collapsed onto her hands and knees, gasping, retching, trying to get clean air into her lungs. Her radio crackled. Jonah's voice, breathless. Halo, do you copy? Halo! She coughed twice more, then keyed her mic. Copy. Are you okay? Functional. A pause, then, You just saved all of us. She didn't respond, just forced herself upright, checked her gear, and started moving toward the extraction point. Behind her, the ridge burned. Ahead, the team was gathering at the rally point, battered and bloodied but alive. All except one. Eli Torres remained in the compound, lying in the dust, surrounded by the wreckage of the alley that had been his death trap. Rhea's hands clenched into fists as she walked. Her mind replayed the explosion, the phosphorescent paint, Liam's trembling hands. Eli's final message. Trust your gut. She knew what had happened, knew who was responsible, but the proof was scattered across a battlefield and her team was still in danger. So she swallowed the grief, the rage, the betrayal, pushed it all down into a locked box in her chest, and kept moving, because that's what Eli would have told her to do. The extraction birds arrived 20 minutes later, rotors thundering in the night sky. The team loaded up, hauling gear and wounded. Rhea was the last to board, moving slowly, her body screaming in protest. Jonah grabbed her arm as she climbed in, helped her into a seat. His grip was firm, his eyes wide. "I don't know what you are," he said quietly, just for her. "But thank you." She nodded once, didn't trust herself to speak. Across the cabin, Liam sat alone, hands still stained with Eli's blood, staring at nothing. His face was blank, empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left just a shell. Rhea looked at him and felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, just cold, hard clarity. The rotors spun faster, and the bird lifted off, banking away from the burning compound. As they climbed, Rhea reached into her vest pocket, pulled out the Polaroid, looked at Eli's face one more time. Then she tucked it away, closed her eyes, and began counting her breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. The rhythm steadied her, calmed the shaking in her hands, because she had work to do, questions to answer, a brother to bury, and another brother to hold accountable. But first, she had to survive the flight home. The bird cut through the darkness, carrying 22 living operators and the memory of one who'd given everything. And in the back, alone except for the roar of the engines, Rhea Calder whispered 3 words into the void. "I'm sorry, Eli." Then she opened her eyes, looked out at the desert below, and started planning what came next. The helicopter cabin was silent except for the engine roar. Rhea sat with her back against the cold metal wall, hands resting on her knees, eyes fixed on the floor. Around her, the team sat in various states of exhaustion. Some stared out the windows, others cleaned weapons with mechanical precision, hands needing something to do. Jonah spoke quietly into his headset, coordinating with command. Nobody talked about what had just happened. Not yet. The shock was too fresh. Rhea's radio earpiece crackled with a faint signal. Not the main channel, the backup frequency she and Eli used for private communications. She frowned, reached up to adjust the volume. Static. Then a voice. Not live. A recording. Automated playback triggered by... She checked her device. A deadman switch protocol. Set to transmit if Eli's biometrics flatlined for more than 10 minutes. Her blood went cold. The recording started. Eli's voice, tired but steady. "Halo, if you're hearing this, I'm already gone." Rhea's hand froze on the radio. She glanced around the cabin. No one else was on this frequency. This message was only for her. Eli continued. "I need you to know something. About Liam. About tonight. I found out 3 days ago that he was being blackmailed. The organization threatened Mother Superior and the orphanage. 30 kids under 12. They told him they'd burn the building with everyone inside if he didn't cooperate." Rhea's vision blurred. She pressed her palm against her mouth to keep from making a sound. They wanted him to sabotage the mission, create casualties. Preferably me, because I'd been asking too many questions about his behavior. I confronted him last night. He broke down completely, told me everything. He didn't want to do it, Rhea. He was trying to find another way, but they gave him 16 hours and sent him a photo of Mother Superior with crosshairs on her face. A pause in the recording. Background noise. Eli taking a shaky breath. "So, I made a choice. I told him to use me. Make it look like an accident. Let my death be the casualty that satisfies them. Maybe that buys you time to stop the real threat. Maybe it keeps Liam from having to murder someone else and lose himself completely." Rhea's shoulders shook. Silent tears ran down her face, dripping onto her gloves. "I know you're angry right now. I know you want to put a bullet in him. But Rhea, listen. He's still our brother. The organization broke him. They found his weakest point and exploited it. If we lose him to hatred and vengeance, then they win twice. They get me and they get him." The recording quality shifted, like Eli had moved closer to the microphone. "You and Liam are the only family I ever had. If my death keeps him from becoming a monster and gives you the chance to tear down the people who did this, then it's worth it. Don't cry for me. Make them pay. And tell Liam something for me." Another pause, longer this time. "Tell him I forgive him. And he needs to forgive himself, because the guilt will kill him faster than any bullet." Static, then silence. The recording ended. Rhea sat completely still, tears streaming, barely breathing. Around her, the team remained oblivious, lost in their own thoughts. She reached up slowly and switched off the radio, pulled the earpiece out, and tucked it into her pocket. Her hands were shaking again, not from fear, from grief so deep it felt like her chest was splitting open. Eli had known, had chosen. had walked into that alley fully aware it was rigged, had let Liam lead him to his death because he believed it was the only way to save everyone else. She looked across the cabin at Liam. He sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. His shoulders moved slightly, crying maybe, or just shaking. For a moment, she hated him so completely that her vision went red. Wanted to cross the cabin and wrap her hands around his throat. Wanted to make him feel every second of pain that Eli must have felt in those final moments. But then Eli's voice echoed in her mind. He needs to forgive himself. She forced herself to breathe. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. The helicopter banked left, heading back toward base. In the distance, the first gray light of dawn touched the horizon. Rhea closed her eyes and whispered so quietly that no one else could hear, "I'll finish it, Eli. All of it. I promise." When she opened her eyes again, Vance was watching her from across the cabin. He didn't say anything, just gave her a single, slow nod. He knew. Somehow, he knew. The helicopter touched down at 05:30. The team disembarked in silence, moving like ghosts through the pre-dawn darkness. Medics rushed forward to check the wounded. Debrief officers waited with clipboards and cameras ready to document everything. Rhea walked past all of them. Her body moved on autopilot, muscle memory carrying her toward the medical tent. A corpsman tried to stop her, saying something about mandatory checks, but she brushed past without responding. She needed to be alone, needed to think. But Briggs intercepted her outside the tent, hand on her shoulder. Not rough, just firm enough to stop her. Called her. "We need to talk." She turned slowly. Briggs stood with his arms crossed, face unreadable in the dim light. Behind him, Vance emerged from the operations center, tablet in hand. Briggs glanced around, making sure they were out of earshot, then spoke quietly. "I just got off the phone with JSOC. They confirmed something I wasn't read into. You're not what your file says you are." Rhea said nothing, just waited. "Naval Intelligence placed you undercover 8 months ago. Mission parameters. Identify and expose an insider selling classified mission intel to a foreign arms syndicate. You were supposed to stay hidden, let the target feel safe, and document everything." He paused. "What I want to know is why you didn't tell us before the mission started." Rhea met his eyes. "Because the insider was on this team. If I revealed myself, he would have gone to ground. Eli and I assessed the risk. We decided the best play was to let him think he was winning." "Eli knew?" Briggs looked genuinely surprised. "He figured it out 2 weeks ago. Recognized my training. He didn't report me because he understood what I was doing. Instead, he helped me gather evidence." Vance stepped forward, holding up the tablet. On screen was a series of intercepted communications, encrypted messages, financial transactions, photographs of documents that should never have left secure facilities. "The evidence points to one person," Vance said quietly. "Liam Cross, Ghost. He's been feeding intel to a contractor front company for 6 months, in exchange for money and protection for certain individuals." Briggs swore under his breath. "The orphanage." Rhea nodded. "They threatened Mother Superior. Threatened the children, gave him impossible choices. He broke." Briggs rubbed his face with both hands. "So tonight's ambush, that was him?" He marked the target zones with phosphorescent paint, led the team into a pre-planned kill box. The enemy knew exactly where we'd be because he told them. Rhea's voice was flat, emotionless. Eli confronted him last night. Liam confessed everything, so Eli made a decision. What decision? To become the sacrifice that satisfied the contract. To let Liam lead him into the trap so the organization would think their plan succeeded and wouldn't immediately execute the children. Rhea's hands clenched. Eli volunteered to die to buy us time. Briggs stared at her. Vance looked down at his tablet, jaw tight. "Where's Cross now?" Briggs finally asked. "In his tent, under guard. I requested surveillance the moment we landed." "Good," Briggs took a breath. "Calder, I owe you an apology. We underestimated you, disrespected you, and you saved 22 lives tonight while we were too blind to see what you really were." Rhea shook her head slightly. "Apologies don't bring Eli back." "No, they don't." Briggs straightened. "But justice might. I'm recommending immediate court-martial for Cross. Full investigation into the syndicate, and I want you to testify. I will, but I need something first. Name it. 5 minutes alone with him, before he's formally charged. Briggs hesitated. Vance shook his head in warning, but Rhea's expression didn't change. She just waited. Finally, Briggs nodded. 5 minutes. Vance will be outside. If he hears anything that sounds like violence, he comes in. Understood? Understood. Liam's tent was under guard when Rhea arrived. 2 military police stood at the entrance, weapons ready. Vance spoke quietly to them and they stepped aside. Rhea entered alone. Liam sat on his cot, still in his blood-stained uniform, hands dangling between his knees. He didn't look up when she came in, just stared at the floor. She stood 5 feet away, arms at her sides, and waited. Finally, Liam spoke, voice hoarse. I heard the radio chatter. They said you're Tier 1, that you've been undercover this whole time. Yes. So you knew. About me, about what I was doing. I suspected. Didn't have proof until tonight, he laughed bitterly. Proof, right. Well, now you have it. I killed him, Rhea. I walked him straight into a bomb and watched him die. I know. So what now? You put a bullet in me? I deserve it. Rhea pulled out her phone, brought up the video file Eli had recorded and hit play. Eli's face filled the screen, tired, sad, but steady. Liam, if Rhea is showing you this, it means I'm gone, and she found the message I left her. I want you to know something. I forgive you. Liam's head snapped up, eyes wide. You were put in an impossible situation. They threatened children. They held a gun to the head of the only mother figure we ever had. You tried to find another way, and when you couldn't, you broke. I understand that. Rhea understands that. Liam's face crumpled. Tears spilled over. What you did was wrong. There's no escaping that. People died because of your choices. But you're not a monster, Liam. You're a man who was cornered and made the worst decision of his life. The organization that did this to you, they're the monsters, and Rhea is going to tear them apart. Eli leaned closer to the camera. I chose to walk into that alley knowing what would happen, because I believed my death could save you from having to kill someone else, could save those kids, could give Rhea the opening she needed to finish the mission. So don't carry my death as murder. Carry it as a gift, and use it. Testify against them. Protect the orphanage. Make sure no one else gets backed into the corner you were in. Tears ran down Liam's face in steady streams. His whole body shook. The guilt will eat you alive if you let it. So don't let it. Be better. Be the brother we needed you to be. And Liam, I love you. Always did. Don't waste the chance I'm giving you. The video ended. Liam collapsed forward, sobbing openly now, hands covering his face. Raw, broken sounds that didn't seem human. Rhea watched him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward, knelt down in front of him, and spoke quietly. Eli gave you a second chance. Don't insult his memory by throwing it away. You're going to stand trial. You're going to testify against every single person in that organization. You're going to make sure Mother Superior and those kids are placed in federal protection, and you're going to spend the rest of your life making sure his death meant something. Liam nodded frantically, unable to speak. I should hate you. Part of me does. But Eli's last message to me said to tell you he forgives you, so I won't kill you. I won't let them execute you. You're going to live, Liam, and you're going to carry this every single day. She stood, turned toward the exit, then paused. One more thing. If you ever, for 1 second, try to escape accountability or make excuses or play the victim, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in solitary confinement. Eli deserves better than a coward. Be worth his sacrifice. She left without waiting for a response. Outside, Vance stood with arms crossed. He raised an eyebrow. He's still breathing? Yes. Good. JSOC wants a full debrief in 2 hours. You up for it? Rhea looked at the horizon. The sun was rising now, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. I'll be ready. The debrief lasted 4 hours. Rhea sat across from 3 JSOC officers, 2 naval intelligence investigators, and a JAG lawyer. She walked them through every detail. The encrypted communications she'd intercepted, the financial transactions she'd documented, the phosphorescent paint, Eli's final message, Liam's confession. By the end, one of the officers was pale. Another looked ready to put his fist through the table. The senior investigator, a woman with steel gray hair, closed her folder and looked directly at Rhea. Senior Chief Calder, Your work over the past 8 months has exposed a network that spans 4 continents and involves personnel at multiple levels of command. We've already begun arrests. 14 people in custody as of this morning, including 3 officers, 2 defense contractors, and 9 mercenary coordinators. Rhea nodded but said nothing. We're also implementing immediate reforms. Mandatory insider threat training for all special operations units. New protocols for monitoring financial irregularities and behavioral changes. Strengthened whistleblower protections. And we're overhauling the security clearance review process. Will it be enough? Rhea's voice was quiet. The investigator met her eyes. It's a start. People like you help us find the gaps. We have to be willing to fix them. Another officer spoke up. For what it's worth, Petty Officer Torres is being recommended for the Silver Star, posthumous, for actions above and beyond in protection of his teammates. Rhea's jaw tightened, but she nodded. He deserves more than that. We know, but it's what we can give. The debrief ended. Rhea walked out into the harsh midday sun, exhausted, hollow. Jonah was waiting outside the command tent along with 3 other SEALs from the team. They stood when she approached, not quite at attention but respectful. Jonah spoke first. We heard. About Eli. About you. About all of it. Rhea stopped a few feet away, unsure what to say. One of the other SEALs, a younger guy who'd made a comment about diversity hires during the briefing, stepped forward. I need to apologize. What I said before the mission was out of line. I judged you without knowing anything about you, and you saved my life. Twice. The others murmured agreement. Jonah nodded. We're not asking for forgiveness, just wanted you to know. We see you now. And we're sorry it took Eli dying for us to wake up. Rhea looked at each of them, saw genuine regret, genuine respect. Eli believed in giving people second chances, she said quietly. Don't waste yours. She walked past them toward the memorial area that had been set up near the chapel. 2 weeks later, the memorial service for Eli Torres took place in a small garden on base. Only a handful of people attended. Rhea, Vance, Jonah, Briggs, a chaplain, and Mother Superior, the elderly woman who'd raised all 3 of them at St. Michael's. A simple stone marker had been placed in the ground, bronze medic badge mounted on the front. Engraved beneath, SGT Eli Torres. He chose love over fear. Rhea stood alone in front of the marker, holding the old Polaroid. She looked at Eli's face, at his smile, and whispered, You were right. About everything. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. Mother Superior stepped up beside her, placed a weathered hand on Rhea's shoulder. He wrote me a letter, before the mission. Said if anything happened, I should tell you something. Rhea turned. He said, Don't carry the weight alone. You are always stronger together. Rhea's composure finally broke. She covered her face with her hands and wept. Mother Superior pulled her close, held her the way she'd done when they were children after nightmares. Let it out, child. You've carried enough. They stood like that for several minutes. Then Rhea pulled back, wiped her face, and took a shaky breath. I have to finish what he started. There are still people out there who need to be stopped. Mother Superior nodded. I know. Just remember you're not alone. Eli made sure of that. At the edge of the garden, Vance approached quietly. He held an encrypted tablet, waited until Rhea acknowledged him before speaking. JSOC sent this, for your eyes only. Rhea took the tablet. On screen, a classified mission brief, 2 red markers on a map, one in Mogadishu, one in Kiev. Text below, Operation Halo, Phase 1 complete, Insider Network disrupted. Phase 2, Shepard remaining assets. Authorization granted. Tower 4 sends regards. She zoomed in on the Mogadishu marker. A note appeared, site of Torres's first deployment, 2019, known syndicate safe house. She zoomed on Kiev. Orphanage records traced to data broker operating from this location, high-value target. Rhea looked up at Vance. They're giving me the choice. They are. You've done enough, Calder. You could walk away, take a teaching position. No one would blame you. She looked back at Eli's memorial stone, at the badge that represented everything he'd stood for. Service, sacrifice, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Eli didn't volunteer, so I could quit halfway. Vance almost smiled. That's what I told them you'd say. She saved 163 brothers who doubted her, lost the one who always believed. And now she's hunting the people who made it all happen. If this story moved you, hit that thanks button to show respect for the real operators who sacrifice everything in silence. And share this with someone who needs to understand what true courage looks like. Ria spent the next 3 days preparing, studying target packages, reviewing intercepted communications, coordinating with assets on the ground in both locations. The work kept her hands busy and her mind focused, kept the grief at bay. On the third night, Jonah found her in the operations center, surrounded by maps and intelligence reports. "You're going after them," he said. Not a question. "Yes." "Alone? That's how these missions work." He pulled up a chair, sat across from her. "Eli was my friend too, and I owe you my life. If you need backup off the books, just say the word." Ria studied his face, saw sincerity. "This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment Eli died protecting us, the moment you saved us while we'd treated you like you didn't belong." He leaned forward. "Let me help." She considered it, then shook her head. "Not this time. But when I come back, if I need someone I can trust, I'll remember." Jonah nodded, stood. "Stay safe, Halo." After he left, Ria returned to her tent. Packed light, gear, weapons, documents. At the bottom of her pack, she placed the Polaroid, now protected in a waterproof case. Before she sealed it, she looked one more time at the 3 kids in the photo, at Eli's smile. "I'm coming for them," she whispered. "Every single one." The flight to Mogadishu left at 0400. Ria boarded the transport plane with a small team of intelligence contractors, all operating under civilian cover. None of them spoke to her. She preferred it that way. During the flight, she reviewed the target package again. The safe house was run by a man named Armin Hajek, a broker who specialized in selling classified information to the highest bidder. He'd been the one who contacted Liam initially, the one who'd sent the photo of Mother Superior with crosshairs. The intelligence report included transcripts of his communications, cold, transactional. He'd discussed Eli's death the same way someone might discuss a business expense. Asset elimination successful, client satisfied, payment processed. Ria's hands tightened on the tablet. She forced herself to breathe, to stay calm. Hajek would face justice, but it would be legal justice, documented, undeniable. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here to gather evidence and ensure he never hurt anyone else. The plane touched down just after dawn. Ria moved through the airport with practiced ease, blending into the crowd of NGO workers and contractors. Her cover was solid, documentation perfect. She cleared customs without issue. The safe house was in the old city, 3-story building with reinforced doors and camera coverage. Hajek rarely left, relying on couriers and digital communication, but Ria had something he didn't expect. Access codes provided by one of the arrested contractors who'd flipped in exchange for leniency. She could walk right in. She spent 2 days doing reconnaissance, learning patterns, guard rotations, delivery schedules. Then, on the 3rd night, she moved. The entry was silent. The guards never saw her. By the time Hajek realized someone was in his office, Ria had already copied his entire hard drive, photographed his documents, and planted tracking devices on his communication equipment. He reached for a weapon. She disarmed him in 2 moves. No flourish, no excess force, just efficiency. "Who are you?" he gasped, hands empty, staring at the ghost who'd appeared in his supposedly secure location. Ria didn't answer, just pulled out a set of zip ties, secured his hands, and keyed her radio. "Package secure, send the team." Within minutes, a JSOC arrest team flooded the building. Hajek was taken into custody, his network dismantled, files seized. As they loaded him into an armored vehicle, Ria stepped in front of him one last time. "The man you had killed, Eli Torres. He was worth 100 of you. Remember his name when they read your charges?" Hajek's face went pale. He opened his mouth to respond, but Ria had already turned away. Kiev was colder. The data broker operated out of a legitimate front company, hiding in plain sight among corporate offices and cafes. His name was Victor Sobol, and he'd been selling orphanage records and operator backgrounds to various criminal and foreign intelligence organizations for years. He was also protected. Local authorities had been bribed. Security was tight. Getting to him would be harder. But Ria had patience, and Vance had sent her support. A local asset, former Ukrainian special forces, who knew the city and owed favors to naval intelligence. Together, they built the case. tracked Sobol's movements, identified his weaknesses, and when the moment came, they didn't arrest him. They exposed him. Every file he'd sold, every transaction, every person he'd endangered, published simultaneously across multiple platforms, sent to every major news organization and law enforcement agency in Europe. By the time Sobol realized what was happening, his entire operation was burning down around him. Interpol issued a warrant, assets frozen, associates fleeing. Ria watched from across the street as police raided his office, watched them lead him out in handcuffs, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Justice, public, undeniable. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. 3 weeks after Eli's death, Ria returned to base. She submitted her final report, testified at Liam's court-martial, watched as he was sentenced to 15 years in military prison with the possibility of parole if he continued cooperating with investigators. Before he was led away, he looked at her one last time, mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." She didn't respond, just watched him go. Afterward, Briggs called her into his office, offered her a promotion. Senior chief, position at the sniper school as an instructor. Prestigious, safe, honorable. She declined. "I need to stay operational," she said simply. Briggs studied her. "Because of Eli?" "Because there are more people like Hajek and Sobol out there. More kids in orphanages who could be used as leverage. More operators who might get backed into corners. Someone needs to hunt them. And that someone is you." "It has to be." Briggs nodded slowly. "JSOC will support you, whatever you need." "Appreciated." She left his office and walked to the memorial garden one last time. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. She stood in front of Eli's marker, hands in her pockets, and spoke quietly. "Phase 2 is done. Hajek's in custody. Sobol's exposed. The orphanage is under federal protection. Mother Superior and the kids are safe. Liam's paying his debt." A breeze rustled the desert grass. "I know you wanted me to let it go, to move on, but I can't. Not yet. There are still files out there with names on them. Still people who think they can use fear to control good people. I'm going to find them, Eli. Every single one." She pulled out the Polaroid, looked at his face one more time. "You chose love over fear. I'm choosing justice over vengeance. That's the best I can do." She tucked the photo back into her pocket, turned to leave, and found Vance standing at the garden entrance, tablet in hand. He held it up. On screen, another mission brief, multiple targets across 3 continents. "Phase 3?" she asked. "If you're willing." Ria looked back at the memorial stone, at the badge that gleamed in the fading light. Then she looked at Vance and nodded. "Let's finish what he started." They walked toward the operations center together. Behind them, the sun dropped below the horizon and the desert went dark. But inside that darkness, something else was beginning. Not an ending, a continuation. Eli's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. The network that killed him was collapsing. The children he'd died to protect were safe, and the 2 people he'd loved most were still fighting. Together, even when apart, the way family always does. The memorial garden was empty when full dark arrived. Just the stone, the badge, and the words, "He chose love over fear." In the operations center, Ria pulled up the new target list, studied the names, the locations, the crimes. Vance stood beside her. "This could take years." "Then we better get started." She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out the challenge coin Vance had given her before the mission, the one from the unit that didn't exist. She set it on the desk between them, the worn metal catching the overhead light. "Tower 4, she said quietly. "What does it mean?" Vance smiled slightly, the expression softening the hard lines of his face. "It's a call sign for the oversight team that monitors deep cover operators. We watch from positions no one else sees. We protect when protection is needed. We send regards when mission's complete." He paused. "We also carry messages from those who can't deliver them anymore. You've been watching me this whole time. Since the day you went undercover. Eli knew about us. He reached out 6 months in, asked us to keep an eye on you if anything happened to him. Said you'd try to carry everything alone and that someone needed to make sure you didn't disappear into the work." Ria's throat tightened. Of course Eli had planned for that, had made sure she wouldn't be alone even when he was gone, had understood her well enough to know she'd need someone pulling her back from the edge. He thought of everything, she murmured. He loved you, both of you. Wanted to make sure you survived even if he didn't. Left us instructions, actually. Notes about your patterns, your tells when you're pushing too hard. Vance's voice was gentle. He knew you better than anyone. Rhea picked up the coin, closed her fingers around it, felt the weight of everything it represented. Then we honor him by finishing this. All of it. Vance nodded. Agreed. They worked through the night, building target packages, coordinating with assets, planning operations. The coffee grew cold in their cups. Maps covered every surface. By dawn, Phase 3 was ready, detailed and thorough. Rhea stood, stretched muscles stiff from hours hunched over documents, and looked out the window at the desert sunrise. The light reminded her of that morning 2 weeks ago, when everything had changed, when she'd lost a brother and saved a family, when fire and smoke had become the crucible that forged what came next. Her phone buzzed, a message from Mother Superior. The children want to name the new library after Eli. I told them he would have loved that. They're already drawing pictures for the dedication wall. Be safe, dear one. Rhea typed back with careful deliberation. He would have. Thank you for everything. Tell them I'll visit when I can. Another message appeared, this one from Jonah. Team's running a memorial ruck march next week in Eli's honor, 22 miles. You should be there. He'd want that. She considered it, weighing duty against grief, mission against memory, then replied, I'll try. No promises. His response was immediate. Understood. Doors always open. We'll save you a pack. She pocketed the phone and turned back to Vance. When do we leave? Transport's ready when you are. Then let's move. They gathered their gear and headed for the flight line. The morning air was cool, the desert not yet awake to its full heat. As they walked, Vance spoke quietly, choosing his words with care. Calder, you know this work doesn't end. There's always another target, another mission, another threat. You could spend your whole life chasing ghosts and never catch them all. I know. So what's the end game? When do you stop? Rhea thought about that, about Eli's smile in the photo, about the children at the orphanage who deserved to grow up without being used as weapons, about operators like Liam who got backed into impossible corners because someone decided their loved ones were leverage. When kids don't have to be leverage anymore, when good people don't have to choose between their brothers and their conscience, when people like Hodgick and Sobol can't operate with impunity because the system is too broken to stop them. She looked at Vance. That's when I stop. That could take a lifetime. Then it takes a lifetime. They reached the plane. The pilot was already running pre-flight checks, going through the ritual that would carry them toward whatever came next. Rhea climbed aboard, stowed her gear with practiced efficiency, and settled into a seat near the window. As the engines spooled up, their whine building to a roar, she pulled out the Polaroid one more time. 3 kids, maybe 12 years old, smiling despite everything life had thrown at them. Liam's cocky grin, her own guarded expression, and Eli in the middle, holding them together the way he always had. Family isn't blood. It's who you'd die for, and who you'd live for, who you'd carry forward even when they're gone. Rhea tucked the photo away safely in the waterproof case, then closed her eyes and began the breathing pattern that had kept her alive through fire and smoke and impossible choices. The pattern Eli had taught her during their first deployment together, when panic had threatened to swallow her whole. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. The plane lifted off, banking toward the rising sun. Below, the base grew smaller, the memorial garden just a green patch among the tan buildings. Somewhere down there, in the memorial garden bathed in morning light, a gentle breeze moved across Eli's marker. The badge caught the light and gleamed, a small beacon marking where a good man had been honored. And if anyone had been there to listen closely, they might have heard the desert wind whisper 3 words through the scrub grass and native flowers. Finish the mission. So she would. For Eli. For the children. For every operator who'd ever been forced to choose between duty and family. For everyone who'd been used as leverage because someone saw weakness where there should have been only strength. She'd hunt the shadows until they had nowhere left to hide, because that's what family does. They protect each other, even from beyond the grave, even when protection means walking into the darkness alone. And she wasn't alone. Not really. Eli had made sure of that. Tower 4 was watching. Jonah's door was open. Mother Superior's prayers followed her. The children would remember. The mission continued. It always would.
Every soldier carry a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to MVB Story for more.